America, and today is National Anthem Day. Mr. President, the journal's been read and found to be absolutely correct.
I don't feel like you rehearsed that very well today. You did. Is there objection to dispensing with the reading of the journal? The chair hears none, and the reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to the confirmation of the journal? The chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. All senators who have bills or resolutions, please bring them to the Secretary's desk at this time. Mr. Secretary, first reading of Senate bills and resolutions, please.
Senate Bill 574 by Senator Mullis of the 53rd, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 31775.1 of the OCGA relating to proceeds of sale and a hospital held in trust to fund
Health and Human Services.
Senate Bill 570. Senate Bill 575 by Senator Tippins of the 37th, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 20 of the OCGA relating to elementary and secondary education so as to provide that local
Education and Youth.
Senate Bill 576 by Senator Strickland of the 17th, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 1973 of the OCGA relating to actions by grandparents or other family members for visitation
Judiciary.
rights. Senate Bill 577 by Senator Strickland of the 17th, a bill to be entitled an act to amend the OCGA relating to serious traffic offenses so as to add aggressive
Judiciary.
driving. Senate Bill 578 by Senators Walker III of the 20th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 26 of the OCGA relating to standards, labeling, and alteration of food so as to authorize...
Agriculture and Consumer Affairs.
Senate Bill 579 by Senators Mullis of the 53rd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Part 1 of Article 2 of Chapter 13 of Title 16 of the OCGA relating to schedules, offenses, and penalties under the regulation of controlled substances.
Judiciary.
Senate Bill 581 by Senators Walker III of the 20th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 4 of Title 44 of the OCGA relating to determination of boundaries so as to designate the most recent systems and plane coordinates for
Science
defining...
and Technology.
Senate Bill 582 by Senator Tate of the 38th, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Part 2 of Article 15 of Chapter 1 of Title 10 of the OCGA relating to the Fair Business Practices Act of 1975 so as to require certain language of
Agriculture and Consumer Affairs.
Senate Bill 583 by Senators Anna Vitarte of the 31st and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 3 of Title 46 of the OCGA relating to generation and distribution of electricity generally, so as to change
Regulated Industries.
Senate Bill 584 by Senators Robertson of the 29th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Part 3 of Article 3 of Chapter 5 of Title 48 of the OCGA relating to compensation for county tax officials.
Retirement.
Senate Bill 585 by Senator Tate of the 38th, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Part 1 of Article 2 of Chapter 5 of Title 46 of the OCGA relating to general provisions relative to telephone service.
Agriculture and Consumer Affairs.
Senate Bill 586 by Senators Gooch of the 51st and others, a bill to be entitled to amend Part 2 of Article 3 of Chapter 4 of Title 32 of the OCGA relating to exercise by counties of power for contract for road projects generally.
Transportation.
Senate Bill 587 by Senators Miller of the 49th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 20 of the OCGA relating to education so as to provide for the establishment of promised scholarship accounts to be funded by the state in the amount of $6,000 per school year for each participating
Education and Youth.
Senate Bill 588 by Senators Miller of the 49th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 3 of Chapter 2 of Title 20 of the OCGA relating to local boards of education so as to provide that all meetings of local boards of education.
Education and Youth.
Senate Resolution 596 by Senators Ginn of the 47th and others, a resolution honoring the life and memory of Mr. Isaiah Berry for dedicating an intersection in his memory and for other purposes.
Transportation.
Senate Resolution 603 by Senators Butler of the 55th and others, a resolution condemning the Russian government for illegally and immorally invading Ukraine and for other purposes.
Rules.
That completes the order, Mr. President.
Mr. Secretary, first reading and assignment of House bills and resolutions.
House Bill 389 by Representatives Jones of the 25th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 8 of Title 34 of the OCGA relating to employment security so as to change the definition of employment to include services performed by an individual for wages
Insurance and Labor.
House Bill 961 by Representatives Efstration of the 104th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 511233 of the OCGA relating to reduction and apportionment of award or bar of recovery regarding
Judiciary.
House Bill 974 by Representatives Gullett of the 19th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 44 of the OCGA relating to recordation and registration of
Judiciary.
House Bill 1009 by Representative Jones of the 25th, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 40 of the OCGA relating to motor vehicles and traffic so as to authorize the use of personal delivery devices to transport cargo.
Transportation.
House Bill 1188 by Representatives Lott of the 122nd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 1664 of the OCGA relating to child molestation and aggravated child molestation so as to provide that each act of child molestation shall be charged.
Judiciary.
House Bill 1292 by Representatives Jappers of the 11th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 20 of the OCGA relating to education so as to prohibit students who participate in 4-H sponsored activities.
Education and youth.
House Bill 1302 by Representatives Bonner of the 72nd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 7 of Title 48 of the OCGA relating to income taxes so as to provide for a one-time tax credit for individual taxpayers who
Finance.
file. House Bill 1303 by Representatives Dickey of the 140th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Part 3 of Article 6 of Chapter 2 of Title 20 of the OCGA relating to educational programs so as to transition a pilot program for
Agriculture and Consumer Affairs.
House Bill 1408 by Representative Green of the 151st, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act to provide for a new charter for the city of Shellman.
Slogo.
House Bill 1411 by Representatives Rhodes of the 120th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act to revise, modernize, and consolidate the provisions of local law.
Slogo.
House Bill 1412 by Representative Rhodes of the 120th, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act to provide that certain officials of Greene County who have served.
Slogo.
House Bill 1445 by Representative Deloach of the 167th, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act to recreate and establish the Board of Commissioners of Long County.
Slogo.
House Bill 1447 by Representative Fleming of the 121st, a bill to be entitled an act to authorize the city of Grovetown, Georgia to exercise.
Slogo.
That completes the order, Mr. President.
Mr. Secretary, can you please read reports of standing committees, please?
Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Economic Development has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 379 do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Thompson of the 14th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Education and Youth has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 357 do pass by substitute, and Senate Bill 452 do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Payne of the 54th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Health and Human Services has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 1086 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Watson of the 1st District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Higher Education has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 333 do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Tippins of the 37th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Judiciary has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation that Senate Bill 197 do pass by substitute, Senate Bill 381 do pass, and Senate Bill 441 do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Strickland of the 17th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Natural Resources and the Environment has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 893 do pass, House Bill 343 do pass by substitute, and House Bill 1148 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Harper of the 7th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Public Safety has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 353 do pass by substitute, Senate Bill 556 do pass by substitute, Senate Bill 510 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Albers of the District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Regulated Industries and Utilities has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation that House Bill 1049 do pass and Senate Resolution 131 do pass by committee substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Cowser of the 46th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on State and Local Governmental Operations has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 559 do pass, Senate Bill 570 do pass, House Bill 1362 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Anderson of the 24th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Transportation has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation that Senate Resolution 565 do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Ginn of the 47th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Veterans and Military and Homeland Security has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation that Senate Bill 339 do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Kirkpatrick of the 32nd District Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Mr. Secretary, can you please read bills and resolutions for the second time?
Senate Bill 474 by Senators Summers of the 13th and others, property tax exemptions, statewide exemption, ad valorem taxes for aircraft used for aerial application of fertilizers or other agricultural products provide. That completes the order, Mr. President.
All right, it's now time for our morning roll call. It is now time for our morning roll call. Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 33rd, y'all.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, y'all. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senators from the 17th and the 30th and the 36th, sir.
Without objection, the senators from the 17th, 30th, and 36th are excused. The chair recognizes the senator from the 7th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to excuse the senator from the 11th and the senator from the 23rd.
Without objection, the senators from the 11th and the 23rd are excused. The chair recognizes the senator from the 5th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask you to unanimous consent to excuse the senator from 6th for business outside the Capitol.
Without objection, the senator from the 6th is excused. The secretary will call the roll of senators. Signify your presence by voting the A switch. The secretary will unlock the machine. All right, it's now time for a morning devotional. It is now time for a morning devotional. I'd ask that all senators please take your seats. All senators, take your seats and please cease all audible conversations. It's my honor to recognize the senator from the 5th to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance and to introduce to us our chaplain of the day.
Thank you, Mr. President. I guess it's time to take a pledge of allegiance. The flag of the United States. Pledge of allegiance. The flag of the United States of America. And to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now to the Georgia flag. Pledge allegiance to the Georgia flag, with the principles of which it stands, wisdom, justice, and moderation. Thank you, colleagues. Good morning. Today I have a distinct pleasure to introduce the chaplain of the day, my friend Imam Asad Khan. Ustad Asad Khan was born and raised in Tucker, Georgia. At the age of 13, he completed his memorization of the entire Quran. Ustad Asad earned his bachelor's degree in economics from Georgia State University in 2015. He then followed his passion for studying the Islamic faith by enrolling in the Medina Institute Seminary located in Duluth, Georgia. While studying at Medina Institute, the seminary instilled within him the desire to serve all of God's creation and to preach a message of love and compassion for all. In 2019, Ustad Asad became the executive director at the Medina Institute, a role that he's still serving. He also served at Medina as a preacher, instructor, researcher, and chaplain. In 2020, Ustad Asad married his lovely wife, Sophia Khan. She couldn't be with him today because she's a teacher. She's a teaching class now. He's also an avid fan of NBA and enjoys watching basketball game in his spare time. I'll let Imam Asad Khan come speak.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. In the name of God, the loving, compassionate, and most merciful, good morning to all of you, and may peace be upon you. I would like to start by thanking the President of the Senate, Senator Rahman, and all the members of the Georgia State Senate. It is a great honor for me to be here today and to have this opportunity to share with you a few words and a prayer. My intention here is not to share with you novel information or ideas, but rather it is for my words to serve merely as a reminder for myself, first and foremost, and for all of the honorable people that are present here with us today. There is a truth that we as human beings have been informed of by God, not once, but throughout time, whether it be by the speech of Abraham, Musa, Moses, Isa, Jesus, or the Prophet Muhammad. May peace and blessings be upon all of them. That truth is that there is a fundamental principle upon which every prosperous society stands, and that principle is justice. It is justice that allows society to function, that allows for the members of society to contribute socially and economically. And it is the establishment of justice that allows for other virtues and values to manifest. I would like to share with all of you a verse from the Quran. I will first recite it in the original Arabic, and then I'll provide you with a translation. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. Indeed, God commands justice, grace, as well as courtesy to close relatives. He forbids indecency, wickedness, and tyranny. He instructs you, so perhaps you will be mindful. The commandment to be just and to uphold justice is a commandment that is shared among all Abrahamic faiths. If we look into Psalm chapter 82, verse 3, the verse states, "Give justice to the weak and the fatherless. Maintain the right of the afflicted and the destitute." The message of justice is a timeless message because justice is an absolute value. And as believers in God, and as those who believe that we will all one day be held accountable by God, our commitment to justice should be irrespective of who it is for or against. God states in the Quran, "O you who believe, be upholders of justice, witnesses for God, even if it be against yourselves, parents, or relatives." He also states, "And do not let the hatred of a people prevent you from being just." Such should be our commitment to justice. In fact, if we look into the life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, we find that it is the absence of justice that causes a society to crumble. In the life of the Prophet Muhammad, there was once a woman who had committed theft, and she happened to be a person of high social status. And as a consequence, there were those who wanted to intercede on her behalf. And to them, the Prophet responded and said, "What led the nations before you down the path of destruction was that when the poor and those of lower social status committed a crime, they were punished. And when those who were rich and of a higher social status, when they committed a crime, they were forgiven. It was their betrayal of justice that led them to ruin." So let us renew our intentions in this moment to be of those who stand firm for justice and who seek to uphold it. Let us resolve to be those who use our positions and platforms that have been bestowed upon us by God to stand against indecency, wickedness, and tyranny. And with that intention in heart and mind, senators, I request you to join me in prayer. We pray to you, our Lord, our sustainer, the Lord of the heavens and the earth, the creator of all in existence, the loving, merciful, and most compassionate. We ask you for guidance to guide our hearts, our minds, our words, and our actions to that which is pleasing to you, and guide us to righteous decisions. Grant us the strength to honor the positions you have bestowed upon us. Guide us to serve these positions in a manner that is pleasing to you. Give us thankful hearts for our good fortune to live in this great country and the great state of Georgia. We ask you to bless this great nation and those who reside within it, to bless the great state of Georgia and its residents, and we ask you to bless all of humanity. Grant your grace to those who are suffering nationally and internationally. Protect those who are innocent. Grant sustenance to the needy and heal the ill. And finally, we ask you for your love and for the love of those whom you love and the love of everything that brings us closer to your love. Amen. Thank you.
Are there any unanimous consents? The chair sees none. Does any senator wish to rise on a point of personal privilege? The chair recognizes the distinguished senator from the 4th. For what purpose does the senator from the 4th rise?
Mr. President, I'd like to excuse the senator from the 3rd, please, sir.
Without objection, the senator from the 3rd is excused. Would any senator wish to rise on a point of personal privilege? The chair recognizes the senator from the 52nd. The MVP of the kickball game, from what I understand, I've had several reports about the defense that you played. I don't know how you played offense, but certainly won an award for defense.
Well, I'm still walking today, though some of them said they weren't sure I would be, Mr. President. The appropriations chair in the outfield was very helpful with me. But I come today because I was Tuesday talking to the senator from the 11th who has been on many deliveries of babies and said, just here's the situation with my daughter. Give me your best estimate. I know it could go on for days. He said 8 to 15 hours. It was 11 hours. And so he was pretty spot on. So Connor Paul was born in Marietta to my daughter there Tuesday night, and it's my first grandchild. The senator from the 33rd has a new constituent that will be coming home from the hospital today there. And while my youngest daughter and I, who are UGA graduates, are hoping for a 2045 graduate of UGA, my daughter who went to Wake Forest and her husband who went to that trade school right down here on North
It's
Avenue.
called Georgia Tech.
Anyway, they may have different ideas, but mom and baby are perfect and everything is great. And so if I look older, it's because I'm a granddad now. Thank you, Mr. President.
You had a little extra purpose yesterday playing defense in that kickball game. Now we all understand. Chair recognizes the senator from the 53rd for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do want to talk about the kickball game. I know it's a surprise to you that I wasn't the athlete of the day yesterday, but I was the award-winning announcer of the game yesterday, and I want to say how proud I am for all of our teammates that did a great job. I tell you, everybody participated and gave in. I've never seen speed like I did from the senator from the 41st. What a fast athlete. Our photographer, Keenan, did a great job along with our appropriations chair, and of course, the award winner, the gentleman from Rome, did a great job. But I would like to say, even though we barely lost, it was because of driving winds whenever we were up to kick against us, some calls that were somewhat questionable on the other side. So let me say, even though the Georgia House Pansies won at 8, but the Georgia Senate Wildcats were at 5 and did a great job. Thank you, Mr. President. Sorry, I missed one person.
The senator from the 53rd has continued to be recognized.
Thank you, sir. We all need to thank Stacy Peary for putting it together. She did a great job, along with the captain of the team, the senator from the 7th. Let's give them a hand. Thank you.
Where did you kick in the lineup? Were you the cleanup kicker? Oh, the announcer. Well done. Chair recognizes the senator from the 9th for a point of personal privilege.
Good morning, members. I rise today to bring to your attention something that happened yesterday that I believe we should not be doing in this chamber as electeds, in our respect for each other. Yesterday, I was to have a hearing on a bill, Senate Bill 523. It was actually a jobs bill to keep jobs here in Georgia. and prevent companies from sending those jobs overseas at a time where people desperately need jobs. And this was for call center jobs, keeping those jobs right here. The senator from the 14th is the chairman of that committee. Incidentally, and ironically, he's running for labor commissioner, a statewide seat. I'm going to read to you all the quote that he gave, or his words spoken after that meeting. The senator from the 14th, and I quote, "We had another presentation that we were going to hear or consider. And so far, members of this committee and those that maybe are within hearing voice of these actions have consequences. And so we just came out of Black History Month. And certainly we took time to recognize and appreciate the contributions of those in that community to our state and to our nation. But we have some, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, that has equally contributed to our community. And when comments are made that are as offensive as they were made towards an individual like that, the individual that would like to come and have their presentation heard, I think they need to go see the senator from Savannah and make that right. Because we're not just going to use our mics as a bully pulpits to attack individuals, regardless of what side of the aisle you're on, regardless of where you are in any of your verticals, I'm going to say districts. Supreme Court Justice Thomas has been a stalwart of the people and freedom, and I think he stands out. And with that, we are adjourned. That's why I am not hearing Senator Merritt's Senate Bill 523. Now, it is our job in this Senate to come to the well and advocate for our communities, to speak the truth here, and we have a duty to do this because we do have alternative views, and those views should be spoken and respected by both sides of the aisle. And to be punitive towards a senator in this way is not how we do things in this chamber. I was disrespected. I am trying to be silenced, and I was duly elected, like the senator from the 14th, from the people of the district of the 9th. I say that as a black woman, the first black woman elected into District 9, this was a slight on me, and it was a slight on the people that I represent. I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the senator from the 34th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. I rise today with a special guest, a very special guest, as a matter of fact. He happens to hail from my church, my home church. You all have heard me talk about Antioch Baptist Church North, because I was born and raised there all my life. But today it's all about Hank Stewart. Whereas Hank Stewart, a national renowned figure, is a poet, author, activist, philanthropist, humanitarian, and motivator speaker. And whereas Stewart's talent has afforded him a unique opportunity to recite his work to the mother of the civil rights movement, Mrs. Rosa Parks, as well as First Lady Michelle Obama. Whereas Stewart has written and performed commercials for the McDonald's Corporation and WAGA Atlanta Black History Spot, which resulted in an attainment of 2007 Emmy, Promax, and Gabby Awards. And whereas in 2003, he collaborated with prolific author Kendra Norman Bellamy and co-authored 2 best-selling novels, loose based off the poem he had written titled 3:56 a.m. and the Morning After. Whereas Stewart poetry on love, history, and spirituality has long been cherished by his dedicated fans for this emotional impact and intensity, and he does not shy away from sensitive subject matters such as breast cancer, domestic violence, sex and human trafficking, adultery, and more. And whereas, as further testament of his philanthropist nature, Stewart co-founded the Stewart Foundation with Glenn Mason, a youth leader organization that has positively impacted the lives of thousands of youth and students since 2006. And whereas in 2016, Congressman Hank Johnson recognized Stewart's work and declared him poet laureate. Dag, boy, that's quick. I'm gonna stop that, because what I want to end with is just a brief of what Stewart has done. He reminds us, when I stop at a traffic light and think about Morgan Garrett. I took to the left, son of the Capitol, Benjamin Banneker, and I thought about Rosa Parks and would have missed that bus. Thank you, Stewart, for being here. Thank you for all you do. Mr. President, I'll yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 41st with a point of personal privilege.
Good morning. I want to invite you all this day to go out and test drive an electric vehicle. The senator from the 1st and I are sponsoring EV Day, and so there are a bunch of beautiful, wonderful EV cars out there for you to test drive. As we try to change our country and to make sure our air is fresher to breathe, but to also get rid of our dependence on oil, this is one of the ways we do it. It's by driving EV cars. So please, I encourage you to go sign up to test drive. At the very least, it's fun because you don't even have to use the brakes. Like, it's pretty incredible. So go try it out. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 44th, who's right down here, for a point of personal privilege. She's going to get paperwork. The chair recognizes the senator from the 22nd for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to quickly comment and remind ourselves that we, as long as we like it or not, we're the example of what American democracy and the republic is all about. And we have an obligation to show how the democratic process works. A few years ago, I was debating an abortion bill, and I went to the Will and spoke. I was a little younger then, and I actually went to a feed where persons were making comments. And I knew for a fact that the comments would be negative, but what I didn't expect was persons who kept saying, cut his mic off as I was speaking. Multiple occasions, different people were saying, cut his mic off, cut his mic off. The last thing we should be doing is turning off mics. The last thing we should be doing is cutting off speech and debate. And that's exactly what we saw occur yesterday. We have to be heard on all issues, no matter what, because we are that example. The people look to us. And it was amazing to see persons say, cut his mic off. What happened puts us on a dangerous path that we have to be very careful about going down. It doesn't matter whether Republican or Democrat. We cannot walk that particular path. We have to be that example. And sometimes being an example for larger issues such as American democracy and republicanism is tough. It's one of the toughest things we can do because it's so much easier to go the other route. It's so much easier to go the negative route. It's so much easier not to follow the democratic process. But I hope that after what occurred, as someone's mic was cut off and not allowed a hearing, after what occurred, we will reassess ourselves and know that we have to maintain the democratic principles that we claim to espouse. And with that, I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 33rd with a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President, my fellow senators, colleagues, friends, and y'all. As you know, March is Women's History Month, and I want to talk about Alexa Kennedy. She was born in Lansing, Michigan in 1950. Dr. Alexa Irene Kennedy broke both gender and color barriers when she became the first African-American woman neurosurgeon in the United States in 1981. While majoring in zoology at the University of Michigan, Kennedy became interested in medicine after attending a summer camp on genetics for minority students. After receiving her BS in 1971, Kennedy graduated cum laude from the College of Medicine at the University of Michigan in 1975. While she was initially interested in internal medicine, Kennedy later developed an interest in neurosurgery. She was accepted as a surgical intern at Yale New Haven Hospital in 1975. She was the first black woman to be enrolled in the hospital program. I made it to Minnesota for residency, and before I knew it, I was a neurosurgeon, she said. I have achieved my dream, Kennedy wrote in her personal essay at the University of Michigan. And that's all it was to me, because being the first of anything was never my goal. And if any of our senators feel they need a neurosurgeon, you know who to go to. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 44th, the patient senator from the 44th, who's busy over here taking pictures.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. As a graduate of Spelman College, I am here today to say that it is Spelman College Day at the Capitol. Thank you. Spelman College has maintained its commitments to its students during the COVID-19. It is a university that was founded in 1881 as the Atlanta Baptist Female Seminary, which became Spelman College in 1924. It is accredited by the Commission on Colleges of Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, and is also a member of the Atlanta University Center Consortium. Spelman College has long been recognized as the leading educator of women of African descent and is now named among the top 100 liberal arts colleges in the nation and is one of the most selective women colleges in the United States. So today, the National Alumni Association of Spelman College, the Georgia chapters, Atlanta, Albany, Athens, Augusta, Columbus, Decatur, Savannah, and West Georgia will be celebrating Spelman Day at the Capitol, and all Spelmanites. And Spelman College Day at the Capitol, thank you, this is Senator Orrock's district. I'm sorry, this is the senator from the 36th district. And Spelman College Day at the Capitol is meant to inform and enlighten the Spelman College community, women who make a choice to change the world, and the Georgia community as a whole. The event has historically served as an opportunity to interact with our state legislators and advocate for legislation that impacts women, children, our institution, and marginalized community. President Dr. Mary Smith-Campbell and the Spelman College faculty and staff, students, alumni, and friends of Spelman College, this is our day here at the Georgia State Capitol. Let's give Spelman College a big hand. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 32nd for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't know if this particular group has made their way over here yet, but I wanted to give a welcome to the Capitol and a big thank you to the Georgia Fraternal Order of Police. They are here today visiting the Capitol, and we all owe our law enforcement officers a debt of gratitude for serving and protecting us every single day. So I hope that they will feel welcome, and you may see a lot of people running around in uniforms today. I especially want to thank the senator from the 29th who spent his first career doing that work, and it's certainly very important to all of us. So welcome to the Capitol, Georgia FOP. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 24th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today I come with a heavy heart. When we're in this session, and I'm glad we're doing it, when we're looking at trying to help any way we can with mental health and drug addictions, alcohol and drug addictions, I'm glad we're working doing the best we can to help people in this great state of Georgia. But today I stand in this well that when it really touches home, when you got a young man that's a mile down the road from your house that you've tried to mentor and try to get him on the right track and try to love him and help him turn his life around, it gets dear to your heart. I want to thank my son-in-law and my daughter for spending time with this young man, Justin Welcher. We come Saturday, Justin passed away. We had the funeral service yesterday afternoon at 5 o'clock. But why I want to thank my daughter and my sister, my son-in-law, is that they got him to get involved with church. And he went to church, and he joined the church about 2 months ago. But he's home, and we're not now. But I just ask for a silence a moment for the Justin family.
Senators ask us all to rise for a moment of silence.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 37th to introduce the doctor of the day.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. It's my pleasure to introduce to you today the Doctor of the Day, Dr. Parshell Connolly. Dr. Connolly is a board-certified physical, medical, and rehabilitation specialist for Kaiser Permanente's pain management clinics. Pain management provides non-surgical spine care for the Southeast Permanente Medical Group, TSPMG. Dr. Connolly is a physiatrist. I'd never heard of that till I read this, that there was such a thing. For everyone's edification, a physiatrist are medical doctors who treat patients suffering from medical conditions that impair their function and quality of life. They apply basic core principles of therapeutic exercise, modalities, healthy diet, and minimal medications to promote healing from physical impairments, including acute and chronic back and neck pain. We might need one of them in the Senate. Some of us cause acute neck pain. Dr. Connolly has 2 daughters and lives in Marietta. She's from a large family of Connollys from Griffin, Georgia. She enjoys gardening, cooking, baking, yoga, and Zumba. She's a member of Mount Perrin Church and the Atlanta Medical Association. She especially enjoys her evening walks with Lila, the family golden doodle. I hope you don't need her services today, but give her a warm Senate welcome when you see her. Thank you so much.
You have a consent calendar of privilege resolutions before you. Does any senator wish to remove a resolution from the consent calendar? The chair sees none. Is there objection or adoption of the resolutions on the consent calendar? The chair hears none, and the resolutions on the consent calendar are adopted. Are there any motions to withdraw and commit? Chair recognizes the senator from the 35th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask to unanimously consent that SB 272 be withdrawn from the Committee on Government Oversight to the Committee on Special Judiciary, and both chairpersons have agreed.
Ms. Secretary, can you please read the caption?
Senate Bill 272 by Senators James of the 35th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 8 of Title 50 of the OCGA relating to the Department of Community Affairs so as to create the Racial Equity and Reconciliation Commission of Georgia and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Senator, have you gotten the approval of both chairmen of each committees? At this time, that motion is not recognized until both chairmen have agreed. Thank you. Are there any other motions to withdraw and commit? The chair sees none. You have a consent calendar of local bills before you. Mr. Secretary, are there any objections filed to any bills on the local consent calendar?
Mr. President, there are no objections filed.
Is there objection to agree in the report of the Committee on State and Local Government, which is favorable to the passage of the bills on the local consent calendar? The chair hears none, and the report of the committee is agreed to. Questions on the passage of the bills on the local consent calendar? All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. The Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bills on the local consent calendar, the yeas are 45, the nays are 0, and the bills having received the requisite constitutional majority are therefore passed. Chair recognizes the distinguished senator from Roswell.
Mr. President, I'd ask unanimous consent that the bills that were passed in the local consent calendar be immediately transmitted to the House.
Senator from the 56th has asked for unanimous consent that the bills on the local consent calendar be immediately transmitted to the House. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and they are immediately transmitted. All right, we're now going to move on to the rules calendar. And the chair would like to recognize the senator from the 1st.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent that Senate Bill 403 be taken from the table.
Ms. Secretary, can you please read the caption?
Senate Bill 403 by Senators Watson of the 1st and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 37 of the OCGA relating to mental health so as to enact the Georgia Behavioral Health and Peace Officer Co-Responder Act, and for the purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Health and Human Services recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Watson of the 1st District Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Senator from the 1st has asked for unanimous consent that Senate Bill 403 be taken from the table. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and it's removed from the table. It will be placed at the bottom of today's rules calendar. Thank you. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of House Bill 910?
House Bill 910, a bill by Representatives Ralston of the 7th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act making and providing appropriations for the state fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2021 and ending June 30th, 2022, known as the Georgia Appropriations Act, Act Number 305, approved May 10th, 2021, to make, provide, and change certain appropriations for the operation of the state government and its departments, boards, bureaus, commissions, institutions, and other agencies, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Appropriations recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Tillery of the 17th District Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
The chair recognizes the Appropriations Chairman to present House Bill 910, the amended budget.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. I rise to bring to you what is really a cleanup bill in its simplest form, I guess. A cleanup bill for the state budget, the amended budget for FY22. There's been, since the last time I presented a bill of a budget in this chamber, there's been some changes in my life as well. And those changes cause you to look at the budget differently. As many of you know, my wife, Ashley Nicole, and I welcomed a son, John, into this world. He's 9 months old. Thank you, Senator. I didn't know if you were about to move to adjourn without that rapid applause. And many of you have experienced that a long time before I did, and you already know that joy that it brings to your family. But you can't look at this document the same way after you have children, after you have experienced what some of you have experienced with parents, after you've put kids through school, etc. So I want you to know that it changes the way I've looked at the budget too. And I appreciate what each of you did in the years prior to me experiencing that gift to help me see the budget and view the budget differently as well. You know, I also want to tell you thank you for the marks that you put on this budget. Any budget we have, while it may come through a committee that I get to chair, is not simply the marks of the committee. It simply isn't simply the marks of the chairman. It's really the marks of each and every senator. And I hope you see the reflections of what you've asked for reflected in this budget as well, as you work to represent your constituencies and your hometowns. Let's talk about Georgia generally. The past 3 years have been a roller coaster. You remember when I took over this role and how at the time we were really thought 14% reductions was the first budget we ever presented in this world, I ever presented. How through the governor's leadership, the leadership of others across the hall and in this chamber, we're able to cull that back and to put us in a position that we stand today, which is really at the top of the hill of that roller coaster, wondering what might lie on the other side of that precipice. I said this before and I'll say it again, Georgians and Georgia's economy have remained resilient despite challenges on very many fronts. It doesn't take more than looking at the evening news to know that worldwide we face challenges. You can see the effects of inflation not only in our hometowns, but on our grocery shelves, and also see how that's reflected in prices from fuel to cargo to the price we pay for talent, to keep talent. But Georgia has been a bright spot, not only in the nation, but in the world. Georgia's economy has continued to grow. We've continued to add jobs. We've continued to add businesses, despite challenges, as I've said, on every front. And one of the brightest spots, I think, for us is our ports. If you look at our port backup today, it's at zero. It's at zero when we see so much backup in other areas around the world, particularly in other ports that are across our country. I give credit for all that growth, that expanded business, the fact that Georgia's economy and Georgia's numbers, revenue numbers remain so strong, really to Governor Kemp. And his decision very early on to keep Georgia open despite criticism, and quite strong criticism at times. He allowed Georgia's citizens to make decisions for themselves and their businesses, and they chose well, and it's reflected now in our revenue numbers. While we have the budget now in the Senate, the governor starts that budget, we know that we couldn't be at this position that we are now without our help from colleagues across the hall in the House of Representatives and the House Appropriations Committee. Many of you may have heard already that Chairman England has announced that he will not be returning next year to the House. And while that is a great loss for that body, it's a great loss for this body as well. He has been a strong leader, a strong mentor, and a friend. And his heart and compassion will be reflected in Georgia budgets for many decades to come. And we also appreciate the help of his right-hand ladies over there, Christine and Martha, who've helped pull through this process. You know, the work that they've done has put us in a better position to review this budget for the state of Georgia and its citizens, and it really makes our job easier in the amended budget, and I'm sure it'll make our job easier in the FY23 when that comes across, hopefully next week. Let me talk to you about the bill itself. The governor's FY22 amended proposal included a 9.1% change over his original FY22 numbers, although that was still about 2.3% below 21 collections, which was, I think, a very prudent move for the reasons that we discussed already before. The big items you know, and they've been discussed in media throughout the state, and we've retained many of these in the Senate proposal. A $5,000 raise for full-time state employees who are benefit eligible, $2,000 to meet the governor's prior promise to teachers of a total $5,000 raise originally promised in 2018, $388.2 million to offset prior year's QBE austerity, and $93 million as a midterm adjustment on QBE growth. The governor's budget also included $18 million for state charter supplements, or state commission charter supplements, and $188 million to replace 1,747 school buses across our state. His budget included $67 million to replace the Medicaid Management Information System. You'll see that at line 82.4. And $2.8 million on a Senate priority, which was to implement and continue to implement the All-Payer Claims Database, which has been a strong policy position of the senator from the 11th to help us make good data decisions on medical decisions for the state. In the governor's budget, he also included $8.1 million for DISH payments, DISH, disproportionate share hospitals, but many of you know that better as the Indigent Care Trust Fund, and $2.7 million in matching funds for meals, supportive services, family caregiver support, and preventative health services. The governor's original budget also included $9.9 million for the ADAP program and $23 million to replace radio comms at state correctional facilities. His budget also included $5.5 million for wireless infrastructure upgrades, which are needed to combat cell phone and other technology that we've seen inside the prisons. The governor's original budget also included $4.6 million for Georgia Crime Victims Emergency Fund and $3.1 million to replace firefighting equipment at the State Forestry Commission. There were $2.7 million in his original proposal for EPD for Lake Lanier's water storage agreement, and another $1.1 for infrastructure and seed grants to support precision agriculture. The governor's budget tried to make a substantial down payment on a long-term liability that our state has faced on its workers' comp liabilities. with $150 million set at DOAS for negotiated workers' compensation settlements. It also made a large down payment and investment in our state prisons. Many of you know that many of those facilities are extremely old. Our infrastructure there is dated. It has become a safety concern at many times. And the governor's budget included $432.5 million for state prison facility transformation, which would likely include one complete rebuild and potentially another move to take advantage of some changes at the federal level concerning contracts. The biggest dollar move in the governor's original proposal was $1.6 billion of prior year undesignated funds for tax funds to all Georgia income tax filers. And you see that now, I believe it's House Bill 1032. Let's make sure I'm right on that one. 1302. I'm getting dyslexic here, I apologize. 1302. And that's passed the House, and we expect to take that up in this body very soon. All of those priorities that I've already mentioned are still included in the proposal that's laying before you now. But there were a lot of changes. As you know, you have your own priorities, and those have been incorporated in this document as well to reflect the things that your citizens at home care about, that your hometowns care about, that your constituents care about. And they cared about the pandemic. You see, the pandemic's been trying on families and children in all our communities, and many of your budget ads reflected this. In line 58.6, you'll see where the Senate position supports the Silence the Shame program, which supports mental health and community wellness and outreach. In line 62.4, you'll see where the Senate position also supports Kate's Club, which is a nonprofit that provides grief support to bereaved children for issues that they previously were not facing before this pandemic. And in various other line items in DBHDD, you'll see $1.25 million that was added for respite services, along with an additional $250,000 for non-medical, non-emergency transportation to help with those who would benefit from such programs. One of the true frontline workers in this pandemic has been school nurses. And the Senate proposal, because of senator requests, numerous senator requests, adds $4.1 million at line 149.8 to provide school nurses with parity to the teacher increase you'd see as well. It'd be $2,000 for every school nurse on top of, in addition to, or as well as what there's being paid to teachers. To thank them again for the efforts they've put through in this pandemic. The pandemic's also caused a change that some might not expect. It's been at our state parks. Many of you know that in order to get into a Georgia State Park now, you might need to bring your own parking spot. They've been full. We've seen increased use. We've seen increased traffic. But what we've also seen is our state parks and our outdoor recreation areas across the state is increased wear and tear. The House budget added $14.9 million to address this, and the Senate met with its half as well as we prepare to move into the future at the same dollar amount. Also thinking ahead is another issue that many of you may not know about is the avian flu. It was found in Kentucky. Our Agriculture Commissioner, Gary Black, had to take steps to mitigate allowing that to get into Georgia flocks, knowing that poultry, particularly boiler chickens, is our number one agricultural commodity, and Commissioner Black already took steps to help mitigate that, and the senator from the 28th was strong in bringing that proposal up, and we've recognized that as well at line 47.6. The Senate's long believed that downtowns and main streets are the lifeblood of our communities, and the resilience of these downtowns and main streets are a main reason why Georgia revenues have held so strong during this pandemic. The more vibrant our downtowns and the more vibrant downtowns our state has, the stronger and more secure our tax base can remain with uncertainty on the economic horizon. These downtowns also provide community identity and are an integral, not just economic, but human support. With these economic clouds gathering on the horizon, the Senate's proposal recommends $20 million in rural downtown development grants on line 77.4 to strengthen and secure our communities in light of what might lie ahead. You'll see various additions in the lines for the Department of Juvenile Justice as well as the Department of Corrections. The Senate has put increased focus in the past years on reducing and eliminating extremely high turnover in agencies. You will remember and recall from our various subcommittee reports that at times these agencies we've seen over 100% turnover. Thanks to the help of the senator from the 56th, the senator from the 7th, and others, the Senate proposal will include almost double down on the governor's $5,000 raise, adding an additional $4,000 on top for those two agencies for sworn filled positions, again in juvenile justice and the Department of Corrections. Healthcare makes up 23% of our budget, and the Senate has worked hard in recent years to incentivize quality in care. This Senate proposal does that for our younger citizens by increasing provider rates to enable value-based purchasing in low-income Medicaid and Peach Care, and it does the same for our older citizens by moving $26 million to provide supplemental quality payments for our skilled nursing facilities. This proposal also telegraphs the Senate's desire to move to the most recent audited and updated cost report for skilled nursing facilities in this next fiscal year, doing so a year before expected. The Senate also set aside funding in Peach Care for mental health services on line 28.7, which I think is, on 82.7, which I think is a great program that potentially can increase providers in those regions, particularly regions outside Metro Atlanta, where we've seen extreme need. It's no secret that our state needs nurses. And while many schools are trying to start now, we have currently operating schools with wait lists and others with capacity. This proposed budget provides $5 million in line 97.1 to support equipment and operating grants for nursing programs with waiting lists and current student capacity. Last year, we turned away over 1,000 Georgia students who wished to enter a nursing program due to lack of capacity. And we would like to use this $5 million to help try to resolve that. The governor and the House moved several bond projects forward from FY23 and funded them in cash, and the Senate took a hard look at that as well, and that's in Section 282 mainly. The Senate has also scrutinized Carryforward Funds. I know it's a bill that we debated last year. The senator from the 37th held a bill. There might have been a move to go around his thoughts on that, but it did resurface in the Senate's budget. The Carryforward Funds have a report that's generated annually. Part of that report is on your desk now, and it details these funds that are held by these institutions. In Section 282, the Senate proposal takes a portion of these funds, which is equal to 1/2 of the contingency listed at various institutions, and provides it to the various building projects that were advanced by the governor and the House. You know, we do a lot of work every year in this chamber, but we do a lot of work outside of this chamber when the session ends, on study committees back at talking to constituents back home, and none of that work should go to be wasted. To make sure that our study committee work was not discarded, in line 47.4, the Senate adds $100,000 at a recommendation of last year's study committee on food deserts for centralizing info in a manner accessible for citizens to locate available resources for food accessibility. And in line 336.8, the Senate proposal takes the proposal by the Joint Airport Aid and the Joint Airport Aid and Improvement Study Committee and puts $15 million down as a first investment on those recommendations. Probably the largest dollar move in the Senate's budget, though, is in the Department of Transportation. You know, many times the state budget reflects what happens at the federal level, and because of federal moves, we have to adjust our state budget accordingly. And this year is no different. Earlier last year, Congress passed the Federal Infrastructure and Investment and Jobs Act, and that does potentially make Georgia eligible for substantially more federal funds. There's a state match of roughly 20%. That would leave a 1-to-5 return for Georgia on state dollars paid forward. But the dollar is large. We would potentially have to put up somewhere between $150 and $250 million to make our state match. I told you already that I'm a little concerned about the stressors on our economy and what that would hold for the future. Recognizing that and also recognizing the cash position we're in now, the Senate on lines 500.1 and 500.2 sets $189.8 million down to match the Federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act puts that money aside so we can go ahead and earmark it now. The reason that we do that is because this sets aside a significant portion of our entire match for this federal authorization. This is a one-time appropriation at a time when we can set aside required funds that will mitigate the burden on future motor fuel tax collections of matching this large influx of new federal spending. We don't know when Congress will act to actually appropriate that. We know we can't set aside our match too early, but we could, however, set aside our match too late. I believe this is a prudent and one-time move that puts future legislatures in a better position to meet the needs of the state. Speaking of prudence, while this is the amended budget, and generally the amended budget is slightly easier than the FY23 budget that we expect to see next week, I don't know that that'll be the case this time. Right now, we're in a position where cash seems to be on hand. I'm not sure we'll see that in 23 and as we move into the 23 amended and the 24 next January. So many of these moves you will see now, we do have to take and make sure that we're making conscious decisions, that we're being prudent with taxpayer dollars and not incurring expenses now that we can't move forward later. Particularly the Department of Transportation move, the move at DOAS concerning workers' compensation settlements. Those are to remove future liabilities. If we can take care of those future liabilities right now in a time when we do have the money to do so, it puts us in a position to be nimble and to react more quickly to the needs of our citizens that they may face that we aren't expecting or anticipating now over the next 12 to 18 months. I need to thank a few other people. We couldn't get through this process without our Senate Budget Office. Many of you know Melody and Brent. You also are aware of Austin, Caitlin, Keith, John, Lindsay, and Sydney in the back, and Courtney. If you guys would give them a round of applause for the work they put in this process. They really are a great team whose only interest is protecting state taxpayer dollars. And I really value their input, and thank you so much for the hours that you put in, particularly this time of year. And also need to thank you, senators. Again, the proposals reflected in this budget are the proposals that you wrote to me or wrote to the committee, subcommittee chairs about, and asked to be included for your communities. Thank you for your diligent work year-round, not only while we're in session, to make sure that your communities are represented, that your community needs are addressed, and that we're in a position to move not just part of Georgia, but all of Georgia forward. Thank you, Mr. President. If there are no questions, I'll yield the will.
You do have a question. Chair recognizes the Dean of the Senate to your right.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
Yes, sir.
First, let me commend you on your hard work and dedicated work on the budget. One area, you mentioned a study committee. In the same vein, there was a study committee on sickle cell and the problems that a lot of the patients or sufferers of sickle cell are having getting care or getting to care sites in second-tier cities for the most part. It's a huge problem, and I'm requesting and asking if you would consider making sure that we take a look at that and get some expanded care, some funding in those areas. And I think we talked about it earlier. If I didn't, I want to make sure I do it now and let you know how much I appreciate your work. And hopefully we can take a look at that and alleviate the suffering that we've had from these patients who often experience terrible pain. So if it's in this budget, where would that be? And can you give me a little comparison? Can we expand that to the level that it's needed in those cities? Maybe Augusta has a great site. They've expanded. They got bricks and mortars. For the rest, they're getting buses coming down, and I think that's somewhat inadequate. So.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for teeing me up for that easy softball question. As you know, we've invested in sickle cell research over several years, thanks to you and your colleague in the House who seems to have a pretty good bit of pull over there as well. You obviously have a lot of pull in this body. And those would be in a continuing item. Those were not removed from this budget and would continue to be funded look forward to talking with you more about things if we've missed in the past that we can continue to do.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Doesn't appear that you have any additional questions.
Thank you so much for your time, and I ask that you please favorably consider the Senate amendment to House Bill 910.
Does any of the senator wish to speak for or against House Bill 910? The chair sees none. The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to adoption of the committee substitute? Chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing the report of the committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 52, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Before I recognize the senator from the 19th, I want to thank you for your efforts. I want to thank Melody and Brent and the entire staff, who is second to none, for your hard work. It just continues to be incredible to watch you work through so many difficult conditions. So thank you so much for your efforts, and great job on getting the budget, the amended budget passed. And with that, I would like to recognize the senator from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate immediately transmit House Bill 910 to the House.
The senator has asked for us to immediately transmit House Bill 910 over to the House. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and it is immediately transmitted to the House. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of Senate Resolution 504?
Senate Resolution 504, a resolution by Senator Mullis of the 53rd, a resolution recognizing the significant role that Native American tribes have played in Georgia and dedicating a tree on the state capitol grounds in their honor and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Rules recommends that this resolution do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Mullis of the 53rd District Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the distinguished, most popular Rules Chairman, Senator from the 53rd, to present Senate Resolution 504.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you know, in November, we reported of our Native American ceremony across the street at Liberty Plaza, and it was a remarkable event. Many of you participated with it, and from that, we wanted to plant a peace tree here on Capitol grounds. And a peace tree with the Native Americans and all of our friends is a red cedar tree. But the process to get that done is to officially do a resolution asking the building authority to do that. So this bill simply asks them to allow us a peace tree to be planted here on Capitol grounds. Mr. President, I would be honored to answer any questions that this distinguished body may have, especially if it's a senator from the 15th.
As usual, you've done such a great job explaining that bill or that resolution. There's no questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate your help today.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the resolution? The chair sees none. Is there objection to agreeing the report of the committee, which is favorable to the adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Questions on the adoption of the resolution. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the adoption of the resolution, the yeas are 50, the nays are 0. The resolution, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of Senate Bill 403?
Senate Bill 403, a bill by Senators Watson of the First and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 37 of the OCGA relating to mental health so as to enact the Georgia Behavioral Health and Peace Officer Co-Responder Act and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Health and Human Services recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Watson of the 1st District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Health and Human Services offer the following substitute to Senate Bill 403, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 37 of the OCGA relating to mental health so as to enact the Georgia Behavioral Health and Peace Officer Co-Responder Act, to provide for immunity for the transport of a patient to a facility, to provide for the establishment of co-responder programs, to provide for a co-responder teams composed of peace officers and behavioral health professionals, and for other purposes. Mr. President, Senator Watson of the 1st District and others offered the following amendment. Amend the Senate Committee on Health and Human Services substitute to Senate Bill 403 by striking the quotation mark at the end of line 62 and adding the following. The immunity provided in this code section in connection with the transport of a patient to a physician or a facility shall apply only to injury or damages incurred by such patient or his or her personal representative. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 1st to present Senate Bill 403 and amendment number 1.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm here to present SB 403. Basically, it establishes a statewide framework for community-based co-response teams to intervene in a public safety emergency, deliver mental health services, and divert an individual in crisis toward a continuum of care and all available community resources. Let me just explain and give an example, a little story of how this has evolved. The Talmadge Bridge in Savannah, a suspension bridge over the Savannah River, tall bridge. Unfortunately, we have at times people who come onto the bridge who are depressed and suicidal and jump off the bridge. So what is now happening in this behavioral crisis situation? I'm going to compare and contrast what's happening now to what has happened just as recently as 3 years ago. What's happening now is that a police officer, a law enforcement agent, comes on the bridge with a behavior specialist. But this law enforcement agent is part of the Sheriff's Department, Chatham County Police, one or the other. He is trained in behavior crisis. He has along with him a licensed clinical social worker or someone who's also trained in behavioral crisis. The example that when Mr. Beal and I visited the Behavioral Crisis Center that they gave us in this particular situation with a person on the Talmadge Bridge is they actually took up the director of the psychiatry residency program with them to the bridge. After discussion and counseling and more counseling and discussion, he, the director of the psychiatry residency program, noted that, that they could work with him, gained his trust, and they took him in what they had come in, an unmarked police car by the behavior specialist and the law enforcement agent who is not dressed in uniform, but who has a golf shirt, khakis. That is his uniform. Much less threatening, no blue lights, no sirens, a soft environment that they take him to the Behavior Crisis Center, in which they enter, not in the front door, but on the side door. Take him in the side door, and if he has a substance abuse disorder, he's detoxed. If this is a crisis, a psychotic break, whether related to unipolar or bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, then they are treated. They're plugged into the system. They may stay 24 hours, they may stay 48 hours. But they have a wraparound service that they enroll them in, and they follow up. They follow up within a day or two. They've made appointments with them. They follow up in a few weeks. Now let's step back 3 years ago that what may have happened in the past. And I'm not throwing stones here, but what may have happened and what happens many times when we have patients in crisis or with a psychotic break is that 2 policemen respond. They may or may not have behavior crisis training, and many times they actually have to arrest the individual, and if there's no crisis stabilization unit, they take them to the emergency room. And I was sitting beside an emergency room physician last night, and he said, "Where is the worst place to receive mental health intervention?" And I'll tell you what he said. He sees this on a frequent basis, several times a day. He does the 1013s. The emergency room is the worst place to receive mental health care in a crisis, because what that individual may get, medicines that may or may not be the best thing for them at the time, into an environment that's certainly not soft in pastel colors, in a soft environment, in a non-threatening way that they have in the emergency room. They, at times, may stay there just a few hours, but at other times, and I know the senator from the 11th can certainly testify that his hospitals at times, they stay 2, 3, 4 weeks in the emergency room waiting for placement. Or they may end up, as my sheriff in Chatham County, Sheriff Wiltshire, will certainly testify, that they many times end up in jail. Not the place also to be in a behavior crisis or mental health crisis. That's the story. Now let me give you a few of the facts of what's gone on in the state of Georgia. There's 6 places in the state, and I'm from Chatham County in Savannah, and I'm certainly proud to say that, that we were the first in the state, but we're certainly not the only ones in the state. Athens, Clark County, which has great statistics that I'll come back to. Gwinnett, Rockdale has a combo with 3 different entities there. Carrollton also has this kind of co-responder. Forsyth has done a really good job. They have done an excellent job with this. Cobb County has done a good job with this. So there are about 6 different places around the state, sort of pilots that you may want to look at that as, that has done this. Judge Sweat, who is a retired judge from Athens, along with the Lieutenant Governor, our President of the Senate, and legal counsel in the Lieutenant Governor's office, have driven this bill, and I think perfected this bill, and has set a framework for what we can expect throughout the rest of the state. Because we have these 6 pilots that are up and working and doing a really good job. The statistic that if you want to remember anything related to this particular entity is that in the past, in Athens, Clark County, 90% of these patients, I'll call them patients in behavior crisis, psychotic breaks, 90% were arrested. Now, over the past year, 10% are arrested. So they're not going to jail. They're going to an appropriate place where they can be plugged back into the system and treated appropriately. Now, I'll tell you the pushback that I've had on this was from another police chief who also has one going, and he was saying that maybe Athens, Clark County wasn't counting it right. In his particular jurisdiction, it was an 80-20 figure. 80% of the people were being arrested, and now just 20% are being arrested. Listen, that's the kind of problem I'd love to have. You know, are we arguing over 90% versus 10%, 80% versus 20%? I mean, that's great. What a success. So yes, mental health and behavior crisis is certainly a major issue in the state of Georgia, and this provides a framework for that to happen. I want to thank Judge Sweat again for helping us with this. In testimony in Health and Human Services, we had Chief Flynn, who is from Cobb County, was from Savannah, Dr. Mark Johnson, who is the Gateway Director, psychiatrist in Savannah, who's just a prince of a person, Sheriff Wiltshire there, and again, our President of the Senate and Legal Counsel in the Lieutenant Governor's office. So let's talk a little bit about the bill itself. As you know, as I said, there are increasing demands on law enforcement to respond to these crises in our communities. And SB 403 is a public safety response to these increasing demands, which proposes to utilize existing mental health care delivery infrastructure in the forms of Georgia's. How many CSBs do we have in the state of Georgia? It's 23. So they are directed to provide optional additional resources to law enforcement at critical junctures for public safety, the initial encounter during a behavior crisis. Let's go through a little bit of the bill. So what we're asking to do in general is asking for the community service boards, which are part of DBHDD in a coordinated system of community facilities, which it is a public corporation, an arm of a unified mental health service delivery system intended to encourage cooperation and sharing of resources among these government entities. Section 1 are policy findings. Section 3 is on your desk. I am speaking to the amendment. Clarifies the immunity for transportation applied to the patient and his or her personal responsibility. Section 4 adds the transport portion of it. Clarifies the immunity again for transportation. And let me compliment the trial lawyers on this. They have said from the very beginning that they do not want to hold up this bill. They have said in committee that they wanted to work with us, and they have been working with us. And this is their language that they have agreed on, and that is on your desk. Section 5 is a new co-responder chapter with definitions, community service, and 3711.4 requires the CSBs to adequately staff co-responders, requires DHBDD to maintain current written list of emergency receiving facilities and available for transport for CSBs to access and provide to law enforcement. 3711.5, I want to emphasize this, if this law enforcement agency has elected to partner with a CSB in a co-responder team, then the officer team members are designated, and requires all law enforcement agencies to designate a primary point of contact with its CSB to designate a member of the protocol committee. 3711.16, training. 3711 requires the communication officers to notify any co-responder team. 3711.8, establish the protocol committee. Follow-up services in 9, outlines methods of cooperation in 10. 3711.14 clarifies that statutory framework is not the exclusive method by which law enforcement may establish emergency response teams with behavioral health specialists. So in general, we're requiring the CSBs to establish a framework. We are not requiring each and every law enforcement in the state of Georgia to participate, but let me give you the example in Chatham County. Chatham County, the funding came through a federal grant, and Chatham County recognized that our jail is not a mental health facility and is not the best place to have people there. And let me just say that Chatham County commissioners recognized that this was obviously a cost-effective method of treating people in crisis, and that the method that is ongoing now in all of these jurisdictions except for these 6 places is just frankly not appropriate. This provides a framework to allow what I think is a cost-effective and a very appropriate way to help people in a mental health crisis. Mr. President, I'll be happy to answer questions. If not, I'll yield the well and ask for your favorable consideration.
Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 12th to your left with a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator from the 1st, is it not true that our distinguished senator from the 19th just completed a budget with $1 billion allocated, with the B, $1 billion allocated for behavioral health and developmental disabilities? Is that not true?
The lady knows what as she speaks.
Is it also not true that as senators, as legislators of this body, elected by the people of the state of Georgia, the most important, one of our most important duties is to make sure that dollars are allocated, but not only allocated, but spent prudently, effectively, efficiently, and fairly?
Absolutely.
Thank you so very much. I hope my friends that providers are listening, because we'll be watching. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator from 12th. I think it goes to the role of government. I mean, certainly the role of government is bridges and roads and infrastructure, but it is for our most vulnerable people, and who is more vulnerable than a person who's in a behavior crisis? Thank you.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 29th with a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
I will.
Senator, is it not true that Rikers Island, New York, Cook County Jail in Chicago, and Los Angeles County Jail in California are the 3 largest institutions for housing the mentally ill in the United States of America?
I'm sure the senator knows as he speaks.
And Senator, further yield?
Yes.
Senator, is it not true that in 90% of all communities, the #1 facility where those with mental illness are being housed today are county jails?
You know, that is true, and we're looking with this bill to provide a framework and to follow the lead of these other 6 places that have done that, and thank you very much for your question.
And thank you, Senator, for this incredible legislation.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 26th with a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the Senator Yield.
Well,
Senator, isn't it true that in most cases, and a lot of cases are episodic, especially when people have medicine to take and they get off the schedule? Isn't it true that the majority of those folks end up in the jail, or once arrested, taken to the emergency room or the hospital? And isn't it true that the hospitals refuse to give any kind of long-term care to those individuals?
Well, Senator, that, you know, what you said sort of goes to the heart of what mental health is that many times, because of the disease process itself, they may not feel as if they are ill when you and I can obviously see that they are challenged at times. And if they're not taking their medicines, then many times they can come into a crisis and be in a situation that is just untenable for family members, healthcare providers, etc. It is a very difficult position. I don't want to say I'm not throwing stones at what's gone on in the past, but I think we understand things a little bit better, and I think this is a way forward that I think that we can lead with. So thank you for your question.
Would the Senator yield further?
Yes.
Senator, isn't it also true in order to put a dent in this crisis that we have in the state, it's going to take money?
You know, absolutely. You know, it is certainly part of that, and we just did the budget here. This framework requires the CSBs to do something that they are eager to do. And as I said, in the way the funding was done in Chatham County, we're not telling them how to do the funding. It may be federal involvement, it may be local involvement, it may be state involvement. But certainly, to answer your question, does it take money? At times, yes. But you got to remember too that will they be shifting? And here, I don't think it's our role necessarily as the state to be telling them how to handle this. We're going to give them the framework. What's going on in Bibb County may be different than what's going on the coast in Chatham County, which is what may be different just outside our windows here in Fulton County. They're different environments. Should they have police officers that are dedicated for behavior issues? You know, I think so. I think we can agree to that. But I think that's what they need to do. I don't need to tell them how to do it. We just need to provide them the framework to do that. Thank you.
Senator, further yield. Senator, wouldn't it also be true then, in order to provide that framework, it takes money? And isn't it also true that if this great state decides to pass a constitutional amendment that deals with wagering in this state?
That deals with what?
Wagering.
Oh, betting. Gotcha.
Betting. That at least 30% of all that money should go to health. Give the people the state of Georgia something that they can use rather than something that they put their money into.
Appreciate your question. If there was a question in that, I'm not really sure, but that's not what this bill is doing, and all 6 of those places that have been doing it without wagering or betting or anything like that, but I appreciate your thoughts.
The chair sees what you did there. Chair recognizes the senator from the 10th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the senator yield?
Yes.
Senator, thank you for this bill, by the way. And I'm just trying to, this question is around clarification, because I noticed over on page 3 on line 50 where you kind of enumerate some of the occupations that are that this bill would apply to. In addition to physicians, psychologists, peace officers, the other one is attorneys. Under what scenario would an attorney need to be included in this provision?
Yeah, do you mind if I grab that, grab that page? Apologize. What line are we on?
Line 50, page 3.
Page 3, gotcha. So that's already in the language, correct? Yeah. So that's already in the code section. Yeah, so, I mean, to say that attorneys don't play a role in this, I mean, I'm certainly not there to exclude them, and we're not changing any of the language in that particular aspect of that. How do attorneys play a role here? Multiple different levels, whether, I mean, so a 1013 that I rarely sign, that the senator from the 32 signed a lot more than I did, relating to potential suicides. That's a legal document. And so they're held for 3 days before they're put in front of a probate judge. I think that's an opportunity for attorneys, and they may be represented, whether it's there are many other aspects and layers there that could be for attorneys too.
Thank you. And they would, acting in that capacity, there's an opportunity for them to be involved in the transport as well. I'm assuming that those kind of conversations would happen during the transport of these individuals. Is that correct?
No. No, listen, if you're on the bridge, I don't think we generally consult the attorney about that. Well, the 1013, no. So, but having to do with the transport and the immunity, yes, we did work that out, and they're good with that. And if we need to make further changes as we go along, we certainly will.
Thank you, Senator.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 19th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Gill?
Yes.
Senator, I just want to ask you a few questions about the amendment, if you don't mind.
Sure.
The amendment, it seems to take that possibly in the original bill there was a little bit of an immunity provision that possibly went a little wider than we thought of in the committee. Is that how the amendment came up?
That's accurate.
Okay. And then, so if based upon the amendment now, immunity would extend to these providers who are providing transportation in the same way that it would provide or usually be provided in other folks who are in a governmental setting providing that transportation.
Right. Exactly. Law enforcement. Exactly.
Will
Yes.
the senator further yield?
Yes.
And it's only to that person being transported, correct?
That's correct.
Will the senator further yield?
Yes.
And it's not to someone in the community who potentially would be involved in a car accident or anything like that?
No, no. Certainly if they're acting recklessly, then that certainly does not give them immunity for, absolutely not.
Senator, thank you so much for working to make sure that that there was parity in what you were trying to do and what was already current law. I appreciate your help.
Thank you, and thank you for those series of questions.
Looks like you've got one more if you still yield for questions.
Yes.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 41st.
Senator, do you yield?
I do.
There have been so many questions that I'd just like some clarity. Isn't it true that this is a great bill for all Georgians?
Thank you. Yes, it is true. And with that, I will thank the President of the Senate and his legal counsel and Judge Sweat and all of those involved, because this was certainly a big team and little me. Thank you very much. I ask for your favorable consideration.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the senator from the 36th to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I'm supporting this bill, which came through our Health Committee. I'm supporting the important amendment to the bill, which clarified some critical questions around immunity. I would say that, and the questions have been raised from the floor around funding, and on line 241, page 11, that section, the requirements in the chapter shall be contingent upon the appropriation of funds by the General Assembly or the availability of other funds. I think we need to take this as a clarion call. We need to invest in this. We need to unanimously support this bill today, and we need to unanimously invest. And of course, one way that you secure funds for health coverage, so many of these people that have a psychic break, and I have two of my immediate recent knowledge, they may or may not have access to health insurance. We're one of the states that has not expanded Medicaid to cover Georgians who are uninsured and underinsured. And you heard our chairman, the senator from the 19th, as we walked through the little budget today and passed it unanimously. You heard him talk about the 5-to-1 match in federal dollars for the infrastructure bill. The match for expanding Medicaid is a 9-to-1 match of federal dollars to state dollars. A tremendous opportunity for us to put the funds in place, cover the lives, and bring more money into the healthcare system as they work with the law enforcement system to keep people out of jail, improperly jailed when they have mental health issues, and get them into long-term access to the healthcare providers that are all across our state. Sadly, not enough of them in rural Georgia. But I would just, as we move to support this bill, I call for full-throated support and embrace of bringing the Medicaid expansion dollars to Georgia to help fund the health services. Now, I have a dear friend whose son had a break because his meds were changed and they didn't meet the needs of his mental health situation. He's had struggled for a lifetime, a young man in his 30s. And sadly, I attended his funeral after he was choked down by 6 deputies in a county jail in Middle Georgia. After his dad had tried to get him to the medication that he needed, and they said, no, it's not available to you because you had a 3-month shot, so we're not gonna, that 3 months has got to expire. The young man fell apart. His father had to call all he knew to call at that point in the middle of the night, and that was law enforcement. And they came, and he gave him the meds. He explained the situation. And the next call he got about 3 hours later is that his son was dead. Just to put the face on the need to expand our health care services, because they said there wasn't any space for him anywhere, but they would take him to the county jail. That's what they did. When he fell apart further, 6 deputies jumped on him. He was choked to death. That's one tragic story. There are countless stories when we don't fully fund our health care system. So I urge support of this bill. I think of a young man, dear friends of mine, who had a psychic break when he was working in Muskogee County. He did get good care there. When he was locked up, they assessed him and they got him on a medication and they stabilized him. He's still in prison now, waiting for trial of all the things that he did when he was falling apart with a vehicle. But two incidences in my immediate experience, and I'm sure you all and our constituents could bring countless other examples of why we need to fund mental health, fund physical health, expand Medicaid, pass this bill, and get the funds to move forward and do the great things that this bill gives us the opportunity to do across the state. Thank you. I yield the well.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? The chair sees none. All right, we're going to take up amendment number 1 first. Is there objection to adoption of amendment number 1? The chair hears none, and amendment number 1 is adopted. The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute as amended. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute as amended? The chair hears none, and the committee substitute as amended is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. For what purposes does the pro tem rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Mr. President, isn't it true there have been many accolades in this body regarding this piece of legislation, but we would like for it not to go unnoticed and unrecognized the great compassion that the presenter of this bill and the great knowledge and the great care for his fellow man that this presenter has shared with us today.
The chair fully agrees with your sentiment. Thank you for bringing those words. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 53, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. I want to thank the senator from the 1st for your great work. I want to thank this whole chamber for their great work on such an important issue. It's complicated, but when you work together and you work with one purpose in mind, and that's to try to solve the problem, I want to thank Regina Quick for her great work and just diligence working to perfect this as it goes. Thank you. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the message from the House?
Mr. President, the House has passed by the requisite constitutional majority the following bills of the House. House Bill 1430 by Representative Williams of the 148th, a bill to be entitled an act to reconstitute the Board of Education of Crisp County to provide for legislative purpose.
Slow go.
House Bill 1465 by Representative Campbell of the 171st, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act providing for the election of the members of the Board of Education of Mitchell County, approved March
Slow
4th.
go.
House Bill 1471 by Representative Irwin of the 28th, the bill to be entitled an act to amend an act to divide the county of Stevens into school districts, approved March 23rd, 1977.
Slow go.
The House has agreed to the Senate substitute as amended by the House to the following bill of the House. House Bill 517 by Representatives Carson of the 46 and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 2A of Title 20 of the OCGA relating to student scholarship organizations so as to provide for the inclusion of earned interest in the calculation of minimum revenue obligations for scholarships and tuition grants and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
For what purpose does the senator from the 54th rise?
Yes, Mr. President. Pursuant to Senate Rule 7-1.10B, I give notice that at the appropriate time I intended to move that the Senate to consider action by the House on HB 517.
Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption?
House Bill 517 by Representatives Carson of the 46 and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 2A of Title 20 of the OCGA relating to student scholarship organizations so as to provide for the inclusion of earned interest in the calculation of minimum revenue obligations for scholarships and tuition grants and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Finance recommends that this bill do pass. That completes the order, Mr. President.
The senator from the 54th has given notice that he intends to move on the Senate to consider House action on House Bill 517. The appropriate time is the next legislative day, which is tomorrow. Chair recognizes the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate stand adjourned until 10 a.m. on Friday, 4 March 2022.
Mr. Secretary, can you please read your announcements?
The Rules Committee will meet immediately upon adjournment in 4:50 today. The Agriculture and Consumer Affairs Committee will meet in Mez 1 at 2 p.m. today. The Regulated Industries and Utilities Committee will meet in 4:50 at 3 p.m. today. The Government Oversight Committee will meet at 4 p.m. in 307 of the CLOB today. All their committee meetings have been canceled. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Does any other senator wish to make an announcement? Here's your chance. Chair sees none. The Majority Leader has moved that the Senate stand adjourned until Friday, March 4th, 2022 at 10 a.m. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. And the ayes had it early and often. Senate stands adjourned.